of course, fears, anxiety, and phobias is very, very, it's linked, right? But for now, I'm not going to go into anxiety and phobias because I believe we need to do regression for it, right? If there's a huge fear for heights, or there's a huge fear for tunnels, I'm not going to help you today to look at it and talk to it and befriend it. What we're going to do today is look at a fear, look at whatever fear comes up for you. And in the exercises, in the guided meditations that we're going to do, we're going to talk to it. We're going to talk to it. We're going to see if that fear wants to share some messages with you.
Now, please, Lai-Mei, if I could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and then roll on into the subject, because my introductions are never up to speed with your actual skill and expertise, and you've been doing this for a lot longer than I previously thought.
Yes, first of all, Adrian, thank you very much. And I was nicely surprised this morning to get your text that you would be hosting this event. Like we were just saying before everyone got online, it's been 5 years that I and I talked at your Motivate Shanghai event live in Shanghai. And that was one of the nicest events that I did, because there was a lot of interaction with the public. The audience was, they were just really great people. They really, really enjoyed the experience. I send you the PPT, Adrian. Could you pull it up?
Yeah, I'll just give it another go or two, and
okay.
You keep trying and relax.
Okay.
So, guys, I've been using hypnosis, and the first time I heard about hypnosis, I thought it was a matter of someone going like this with a clock, going, Adrian, we're going to turn you into a chicken. But after all these years playing in the field, I've still never been turned into a chicken. But I found this hypnosis world to be absolutely incredible. So, yeah, I teach NLP, I teach coaching, but we have a little hypnosis in there. And hypnosis and the hypnotic language patterns is what a lot of us use every single day. So rather than being in a negative trance saying, oh, the world's hard, we can get in a positive world saying the world's good. When I work with my kids, I keep using hypnotic language patterns with my kids. I hear parents telling their kids, you kids are trouble. All you kids ever do is blah, blah, blah. That's all like a negative trance, negative hypnosis. When I call my kids, I say, hey, beautiful children, come on over here, beautiful children. You know, it doesn't matter where I am. I keep telling my kids, you kids are so smart. You kids are so brilliant. Yeah. So when we talk about hypnosis, what we're doing is, particularly people like ourselves, we're making peace. We're making peace, and a bit of permission for you to be okay.
So thank you for sharing, Adrian. And like you say, language is very important. So I'm not gonna go into the language of hypnosis. Of course, I'm going to talk and I'm going to guide you on their hypnotic experiences. But I am very passionate about language. And today I want to talk about my journey from fear to courage. And as I just said, okay, can you go to here I am. So Adrian asked me where I lived. And in my name, you might notice I have a Chinese name. But I'm gonna take you guys back 45 years to a small, small village in Belgium. I was born in a small village called Saint-Nicolas. I grew up there. And this is my small sister, Marie-Françoise. We weren't the two of us. In fact, we were 7 siblings. So really big, big, big family. You would think this is the Cosby Show, this is Prince of Bel-Air, Full House, a lot of love and laughing and running around playing. But unfortunately, that was not my childhood. You might see it, a lot of you here are coaches, right? And I do think that our visual skills are very, very keen, are very important. So if you look at the picture, you might see that my small sister is and was very, very anxious. And this is because when I was 2, my small brother died. When I was 6, my dad died. So my childhood was really marked by lots and lots of fear. Fear of social contact, because my mom fell in a very deep depression, of course. How else, she lost everything and she still needed to take care of these 7 kids. So yeah, lots of fear. My mom was very, very afraid that something would happen with us. But I think as a child, you have certain coping mechanisms that you still want to enjoy life and you still find out certain ways to play. Even when my mom really needed silence. So you can imagine a house with 7 kids. Our age difference was like every 2 years. So we were not that different. But silent. We were very silent. And when my mom heard us playing or laughing, my mom being Belgian, my dad was Chinese, my mom would say, "Oh my God, don't laugh because you're going to cry." So Adrian just sharing like, yeah, it's very difficult to cry. For me, it was really, really difficult to cry because, something would happen. So that's what I learned in my childhood. But growing up, I had a very, very strong imagination. And my imagination always brought me to other countries. I could look for hours and hours just to a painting. I would see myself flying out of the house, visiting other countries. I would be like a freak with books. I would read these huge, huge, huge books about crusades. So I had my own imagination. I dealt with all the pain in this way. And when I was 6, that's when I was sitting there on the bench, I would say to everyone, "I'm going to go and live in China." And everyone would say, "But no, how are you going to get to China? We live in Belgium. You don't go to China." But the more people would tell me, "You're not going to go," and this was something that I heard until I left Belgium, until I was 26, my craving, my urge, my desire to go to China became bigger and bigger. So I left to China. Fast forward to the Motivate Shanghai event in 2019. That was a very difficult period for me. Lots of things were coming up in my personal life. I kind of got the grip of everything, but I started to really struggle with my health. 2022, the lockdown, that was okay. I imagine some of you were there. It had good sides, it had bad sides. I always have that character that I look at the glass half full. So it was okay. It was really still okay with me. But I left with my kids to Europe, and that meant the end of my marriage. So going in a really, really, really dark period of my life, I really needed to tap into my courage. And in the year and a half, I really learned that after hitting rock bottom, I needed to go back to that courage that I had when I was 6. Because when I was 6, I truly believed in myself. Everyone was telling me, you're not going to do that. But I was telling myself, I knew myself intuitively, yes, I am going to do this. So that's why I just shared with Adrian. This is a very personal journey for me. So it's really from fear to courage. And that's what I want to share with you today. So I want to share lots of experiences. If you have questions, put them in the chat. Also, afterwards, we're going to go into breakout rooms. And then I'm going to ask a couple of you also to share what comes up. Yeah. Are you? Can you go to the next slide? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we are. Wonderful. One thing I want to point out is so there's a difference between fears and anxiety and phobias, right? So Adrian just asked me, Lai-Mei, introduce yourself. So I gave you my whole life story, but I didn't tell you what I do for work. So I specialize in fears, anxiety, and phobias. I help people to manage anxiety and really overcome their addictions. Of course, fears, anxiety, and phobias is very, very, it's linked, right? But for now, I'm not going to go into anxiety and phobias because I believe we need to do regression for it, right? If there's a huge fear for heights, or there's a huge fear for tunnels, I'm not going to help you today to look at it and talk to it and befriend it. What we're going to do today is look at a fear, look at whatever fear comes up for you. And in the exercises, in the guided meditations that we're going to do, we're going to talk to it. We're going to talk to it. We're going to see if that fear wants to share some messages with you. So today is really about fears. No. Can you go to the next slide? Or maybe, yeah. Okay, wonderful. So these are some of the fears that we can encounter. I guess most of you guys, you are in Shanghai. I would love to hear where you are located, just to give an idea of who's in Shanghai and who's abroad. That's always great to hear. So most of the fears that we're going to talk about today is fear of failure, fear of being accountable, imposter syndrome, so fear of being seen as an imposter, fear of criticism, that's a huge one, fear of making hard decisions, doubt, that's a lot to do with doubt, fear of taking risks, and fear of speaking out or speaking up. Public speaking can also be fear of speaking out. Okay, so I see some people from Shanghai, Australia, Mauritius, Europe. Wonderful, great. Wonderful. So if you can go to the next slide, Adrian. I'm going to tell you something about the biology of fear. Oh, sorry, is this the next slide? Okay.
Just I am having a challenge here, but 1 second. The biology
Okay.
of fear is such an interesting thing.
Oh, no, but maybe it was correct. Oh, yeah. Okay. So before I'm gonna ask each and one of you to go into a breakout room and to talk a little bit, to share a little bit about your fears. Just choose one or two big fears that come up. I want to talk a little bit about the biology of fear. So I'm finishing up my Master of Neuroscience at King's College in London, because I've been working as a hypnotherapist since 2016, and I really, truly enjoyed it. I started to work on pure anxiety because I always had fearful anxiety when I was small. And you remember the small sister with the huge anxiety. So I really needed to uncover that, what was underneath that. Then afterwards, I started to work on addictions because I had a lot of people, my own dad, my granddad, alcoholics in my family. So I wanted to understand that. But 2 years ago, I started my Master of Neuroscience because I'm very, very interested in the biology of certain things. Because we can do hypnosis, and with having had more than 1,000 clients, each person has a different outcome. Right? We just shared with Adrian, some people are a little bit more skeptical. With some people, it tends to work faster. But with me now having the scientific, being able to do lots of scientific research in addiction, in mental health issues, is helping me a lot to deal with people. I can easily or more easily say, I'm sorry, I cannot work with you because I think, for example, you have a bipolar disorder. Of course, I'm not a doctor, so I would just refer them then to someone. Or someone comes to me and I say, I don't think this is the issue. And maybe they don't want to work on that, so I refer them to someone else. Or they truly have an addiction and I say, okay, let's do this. And maybe they're incredibly fearful because they have huge anxiety and they have so much perfectionism. So I first need to work on the perfectionism and then on the addiction, right? But going back to the biology of fear, could you pull up the slide, Adrian? Oh, what's that? AI companion?
Everyone should be able to see the biology of fear now.
Yes. Can everyone see this? Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So very briefly, very, very briefly, but some people say when you're in fear, your amygdala gets triggered. In some way, that is true, but it's a little bit more complicated than that, right? So let me share with you how the brain perceives fear. So the thalamus here on top, this is the area that receives the stimuli, right? It can be visual. So your eyes are the only part of your brain which is on the outside, right? So it can be a visual threat. It can be auditory. It can be sensitive. So the thalamus receives the stimuli. The stimuli relates to the amygdala, which you all know is the fear and flight center, right? It can, or you flee or you fight. But meanwhile, the hippocampus, which is the area of memory, gets activated because the amygdala starts to make the body aware, oh, there's fear. So the hippocampus goes and look in all the memories. It's like an archive, it goes and look in all the memories, like, oh, what happened before with her? If, for example, it would be a phobia, you would freak out, right? Because it would really be in your hippocampus as a huge, huge fear, right? It can even be that your prefrontal cortex just shuts down. That's with phobias, right? The prefrontal cortex, what some of you, of course, know, this is the part of the brain which has the logic, the strategic, the planning. So when the amygdala gets activated and the hippocampus is looking in your archive of memories, it wants to hold the homeostasis. The hypothalamus, the red one, is a center of smart control. It wants to keep that homeostasis, right? Because you need to stay alive, of course. So it wants to control this. And meanwhile, the hypothalamus is communicating with a small gland underneath. It's not on the graph here, but it's called the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland, this activates your hormones. So the hypothalamus is already a hormone center. The pituitary gland is going to send signals to your adrenals, which is on top of your kidneys. Then the stress hormones are going to be sent out. So stress hormones, meaning adrenaline, noradrenaline, and then cortisol is being produced. Cortisol is not per se bad because we all need some cortisol in the morning to wake up. Even adrenaline is not bad. Some people, they love it. Some people, they do love it. High elite athletes, they perform on high adrenaline, right? But of course, you can already imagine if you're under too much fear and the prefrontal cortex needs to shut off and the stress hormones are like producing in your body, that's not a long-term way you can live. That's why lots of people now are having autoimmune diseases. Of course, disease is stimulated by this, by fear and by stress. Also, stress and fear, the line is very thin. We would say before we would say stress is everything that happens on the outside, and anxiety is everything that happens on the inside. But now, because people's environments have also changed, right? People are working at home, or the world has changed incredibly after COVID-19, and stress and fear has been so high that, in fact, stress is also on the inside of the body. Yeah. So let's go to courage, right? Because I all think you guys all know a lot about fear. But I would love to see some hands if I can see them. Does someone know? Yeah, I can only see Adrian. Why is that? Yeah, does someone know how it works with courage? What's the difference? What shifts in from fear to courage? Or you can unmute yourself.
Oh, Lai-Mei, I would say it's like, to me, it's a shift from like an internal part of the brain to like the top. I know when courage, it becomes like sort of like an anger response, really.
Mm. Mm.
All right. And
Okay.
Bernadette,
Can you elaborate a little bit more? Just like an anger response? For me to
Well,
understand you well, Frank.
that's how I equate it. Like in my past,
Mm.
my ability to do something was to overcome the thinking part of the mind, and to do that, it was like a build up like a physical energy and a like a stuff it. I don't care what happens to me. I'm going to do it. Like it was
Yeah.
and I did this a lot with riding a motorbike, or like climbing a big hill or jumping across a ditch. So it was like overcoming that natural fear, and it became a habit that it was closely associated for me with a similar thing of being angry. So
Yeah,
that's my association.
yeah. Yeah, I sense what you're meaning now. Now I understand that. And it is true, because anger is not per se bad. We're not talking about anger here, but I always hear people say, let's calm down, let's get out of the anger, let's get into the compassion. But anger, of course, it cannot persist, then it's an issue. But anger moves us forward, right? Just as like with courage, it's an action. When we act courageously, sometimes we need to get angry, like, okay, stop, this is it. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not being static anymore. I'm not in this freeze mode anymore. We start to act, and that's where the brain starts to shift. Because like you see here on the slide, there's an area in the brain which is called the subgenual anterior cingulate cortex. This is the area where courage lies. And by acting courageously, you feel into the fear. What you just shared, right? You feel the fear, you feel the anger, right? And that gives you a way to also face your fear, because that's what we want to do. Yeah. Yeah. We want to get out of that fight, flight, freeze, feel into it. That's the experience I'm going to guide you through. And then the fear gets transformed, right? But it needs action. So that's how our brain shifts. So I always think this is amazing. I'm a kind of a geek in this scientific thing, but I always think it's quite amazing to see, because it's about how you just worded it. It's about changing something about our actions, changing something about our mindset. And it's not just in the body that there's a change, there's also a real change in our brain. And the more we do it, the more we strengthen the muscle, because the brain is a muscle, right? It's about, I was thinking about this today because I was saying tapping into courage. And my daughter, I think my daughter is more native English than me, right? For me, English is still my second or my third language. So, and she was like, tapping into courage? What's that? I was like, oh yeah, maybe it's cultivating courage, right? Maybe because it is a muscle. It needs to be strengthened. Yeah.
Lai-Mei, if you could, Bernadette, you want to share, Bernadette?
Yeah, just wanted to add, because this is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think, as you would probably know, like in the 1970s, I think, this is where the concept of the triune brain came. So would it be correct to say that fear stems from the most ancient part of our brain? That is the crocodile, because when you look at the limbic system, and anyway, for me, my analogy for fear would be the crocodile in us. And if we tame it, so I have crocodiles in all dimensions, so including a book, and also for me to tame the crocodile in me. I know, yeah, I can't find it right now. I also have like a stuffed toy, crocodile shape. So it's the crocodile in me. And like Jay mentioned, I'd see that emotions as being a spectrum, a wide spectrum, a kaleidoscope, and would fear be like a primary emotion or state? Because very often when you look at somebody who's angry, I used to do angry a lot. When I work on myself, I realize it's not angry, it's not anger, it's fear. And that's a crocodile in me. And it is when I'm and I welcome it. And I've done, like work on the shadow part of me. and my fear, actually, the crocodile in me, my inner critic, whatnot, I have befriended it. And I invite him to the table. I invite him to my board meetings when I need to brainstorm. So they are part of my resources. And I say, yeah, instead of how to say, trying to disconnect, is be more hospitable and welcoming it and see how we can work together. It's a bit like a reconciliation process or taming, like yeah. And I think that's and I see courage or even love as being fear transcend when you transcend, because it's either you succumb to it, it kills you because it becomes negative, it eats you up, or it can be transformed into courage, transcended, and towards love. So at the end of the day, so that's why also we say love and hate comes from have the same roots. And I think somehow it's fear. So that's, yeah, so I see fear can be like a big, how to say, scary thing. And yet, if we befriend it, we welcome it to the table, you invite it, it's a bit like how Rumi says, it's the unexpected guest. Just welcome it with laughter and see, yeah, it's a sign from our unconscious or system, or I don't know how to name it really, but that's it's a feedback mechanism that something is not quite right.
So Bernadette, to answer to your first question, if fear is part of a survival mechanism, of course, if we go way, way back, our body, our mind, our brain, it wants to keep us safe, right? So in case of people with phobias, it can be a spider, it can be heights, it can be social anxiety. If the mind perceives that this can harm you, your mind will keep you safe. So it's going to keep you away from these things. With certain skills, like you said, that's already amazing that you say, I invite the fear to the table, right? We don't treat it as hostile, right? Because what do you do with a guest who comes knocking at the door? You don't start to scream with them. You're not going to have a lot of guests coming to your door and sitting at your table. So it's kind of the same with fear. The next exercise, it's not hypnosis, it's called internal family systems. It's a psychotherapeutic modality who doesn't judge whatever comes up. It doesn't judge the emotion, right? Now, at this point, we are talking about fear as an emotion. I feel fearful. I am afraid, right? Often underneath fear, it has a lot of layers. You just said you had a history with anger, don't we all? Anger underneath is often sadness. But if sadness cannot be expressed, if, for example, as a child, you could not cry, or you couldn't soak, or you couldn't just sit there sadly, of course, you learn to be angry, right? Because you still need to manage your emotions. Yeah. So Bernadette, I hope this answers your question. So fear is a part of survival. But the issue is most of the people, they stay in the survival state, right? But this has very long-term effects on your health, right? On your physical health, your mental health, with other people. So fear for me, it really shifted, and I shifted into courage when I could befriend it. if I could learn from it. Does that answer your question? Oh, I can't hear you anymore.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Done, wonderful. Dance with the fear. Yeah, dance with the fear. That's true. That's true. Dancing with the fear is, it's like communication, right? You want to know what fear has to say to you. You want to learn from fear, right? So let me take you in an experience, okay? Because I can talk a lot, and like Adrian said at the beginning of this talk, we don't want encyclopedias. I'm not gonna share everything. I want you to have an experience, and that's the most important. If something that's gonna be your takeaway today is really have the experience of feeling what's present in your body and giving it a safe space to look at it, listen to it. If you don't want to listen to it, that's also okay. Don't force anything. Just look at it. If you want to listen to it, have a conversation with it, be curious. So I'm going to invite you to really entice that curiosity, because curiosity is the opposite of anxiety. If we want to be open, we want to be curious, really be curious. And there's no wrong or there's no right. Whatever comes up, I'm going to ask you some questions during this experience. And then afterwards, you can share in the breakout rooms. But be open, be curious. Yeah.